Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome to this session. My name is Monica Petri, Senior Agricultural and Natural Resource Specialist, and I'm also responsible for the InfoScale partnership here in ADB. This session is titled From Evidence to Investment and include the signature of a very important partnership for us, the cooperation agreement with InfoScale. So thank you for joining us today, first of all. And I just want to mention something that has been mentioned many times in this forum. At ADB, we are increasingly focused on implementing technology that is science-proof and that do not require to start with a pilot to be financed and then implemented at scale. Innovations such as weather forecast, digital advisory, improved livestock management come with strong evidence for impact. And yet, so many times, efforts are repeatedly reinitiated through parallel pilots, through tests, limiting the ability of innovation to reach scale effectively, to reach millions of farmers. This is what this session is about, addressing the gap of not reaching millions of farmers, going at scale from evidence to investment to scale. And so to set the stage, we are honored to, first of all, begin with the welcome remarks from our distinguished leaders. So first, please let me introduce Mr. Shigeo Shimizu-san, Executive Director for Japan at ADB.
Good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure on behalf of the government of Japan to welcome all of you to this important session and to this signature event marking the new cooperation between ADB and InfoScale. I'd like to extend my warm greetings to Professor Michael Kramer, our distinguished colleagues from InfoScale, and all representatives from our developing member countries, research institutions, and development partners. Your presence shows our shared commitment to scaling innovation that improve the lives and resilience of farmers and rural communities across Asia and the Pacific. Today's session highlights the critical transition underway at ADB, moving from small digital pilots to large-scale investment using proven evidence-based solutions. Too many promising innovations fail to grow beyond demonstration stage due to various barriers. Japan supports ADB's ambition to address these barriers and invest in solutions that can reach millions of people. More broadly, Japan's support through JFPR has been consistently anchored in strengthening agriculture, natural resources, and rural development. Across the region, JFPR is financing a wide range of grants and technical assistance operations that promote climate-resilient irrigation, modernization, food security, water resilience, sustainable rural livelihoods, and so on. These include major investment in climate adaptation through irrigation, modernization, and regional technical assistance on climate-resilient rural development and food security in Southeast Asia, supporting agri-food system transformation and rural resilience. Together, these efforts reflect Japan's long-standing commitment to scaling practical, evidence-based solutions that deliver tangible benefits for farmers and rural communities. Through JFPR technical assistance approved in 2024, Japan is supporting ADB and its partners to turn vigorous evidence into scalable investment in digital and climate service for agriculture, with a focus on Bangladesh, India, and Laos PDR. By addressing technical institutional barriers early, this support helps ensure that proven solutions are ready for large-scale investment. It is within this broader portfolio and strategic focus that the collaboration between ADB, Aim for Scale, and University of Chicago demonstrates how rigorous evidence, strong design, and cost-effective technologies can be translated into investment-ready solutions for agriculture and food systems and bridge the gap between innovation and real impact. Japan places emphasis on mobilizing scientific expertise for development. Through ongoing technical assistance, we are advancing digital agricultural solutions in Bangladesh, India, and Lao PDR, closely aligned with Aim for Scale mission. This reflects Japan's priorities, including investment in multi-hazard early warning systems, agro-meteorological networks, climate services, and smart agriculture, such as IoT-based livestock systems, data-driven farm management, and digital platform for smallholders. They are clearly reflected in today's examples, including India's agri-stack and monsoon onset alerts. I welcome ADB's continued efforts to explore opportunity to deepen collaboration with Aim for Scale. In closing, Japan remains committed to working with all parties to advance scalable, evidence-driven innovation to bring real impact to farmers, strengthen food security, and build resilience across the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Idi Shinzo-san. Now, please, I give the floor to Mr. Jinfeng Zhang, Senior Director, Agriculture, Food and Natural Resources, for his opening.
Thank you so much. Again, this is our third day of the Food System Forum. I share with the ED, I say this is an opportunity to test the resilience and also high attractiveness of our forum, of this session. So again, my pleasure to attend this session and also say a few words. I want to begin by warmly welcome the participation, particularly our ED, Shimizu-san, and also acknowledge Japan's continued leadership in supporting advance the innovation and also resilience across our region. Again, as President Kanda discussed in the opening session, we're located in a very critical, pivotal moment across Asia and also Pacific. Food system under pressure from climate change, world stress, degraded ecosystem, but most recently, of course, you heard supply chain disruptions and the fertilizer shortage because of the Middle East crisis. So same time, the opportunity for transformation is the never been such great. Demand from our developing member countries is rising, and not just in new ideas, but also for solutions. Again, this is a session discuss whatever the solution can be investable, but more importantly, can be scalable. So in the IDB, of course, we always respond with ambition. In the 2022 formal President Masa-san announced $14 billion. But now is 4 years after, we prove we deliver. We following our $14 billion commitment. Of course, we set up the new target with this continued challenging. We scale up to the $40 billion for food system transformation by 2030. By achieving this ambition, require fundamental shift from the pilot innovation to the financing innovation and the scale. That's why today's discussion is so critical. I always talk to our friend, Professor Michael. His participation in this forum so critical. And also, I appreciate Michael attended so many sessions. Whichever sessions requires Michael's presence, he was happy to take it and also witness how broad of this forum cover. But whenever he attended the session, he always a very, very clear message. We need to have a very rigorous evidence, and also, of course, with the right delivery mechanism. In this way, we can reach the meanings and also transform the lives and also the food system. So his contribution and also his research remind us challenge is no longer just discover what works, but more importantly, ensure what will work at a richer scale, with the evidence. So this is also the fundamental, the foundations for this long-term partnership with the aim for scale. I also acknowledge Paul Winders, your resilience, persistence, and since we have the 2023 COP28, you are really persistently with the leadership of the Michael, you guys carry a flag such far, build on our strong cooperations with the leading institutions, of course, supported by the partners, including Japan and the other UAE and the others. This partnership is also bridge the critical gap between the evidence, policy, and also investment. So today's cooperation agreement marks a very important milestone. It moves us from the standalone pilots towards a more systematic approach, identify scalable innovations, and also build this pipeline of the investment-ready solutions and integrate into this national program and also the financial platform. So the opportunity is so clear. Whether it's the digital anniversary services, or the weather forecast, or the climate information, or the livestock traceability systems, we are seeing the real-world examples already. We see this not only just in India, Bangladesh, right now also in Central Asia, where innovations, when we scale, we can deliver transformational impact. So while the colleagues in this room, the message very clear. We already have many of the solutions we need. We have the science, we have the technology, we have, of course, is a very, very strong partnership already. Really, what we need to do is scale up. So let us use this session to move very, very decisively from the evidence to investment, from the pilots to the platforms, and also from innovations to impact and the scale. So thank you so much, and I wish you we have the very productive discussions, scale up our innovations. Thank you, Monica.
Thank you, Jingfeng. And then, in behalf of InfoScale, I introduce Professor Paul Winters. He's the Executive Director of InfoScale. He's a professor at the University of Notre Dame, and he will share the InfoScale initiative meaning.
Thanks, Monica. Thanks, Japan, for your leadership in all of this. We had a great meeting with you yesterday and heard about all the work you're doing with the Asian Development Bank. And thank you, Jingfeng, for the opportunity to work with you. We really appreciate it, that given the leadership of the Asian Development Bank in food and agriculture, it's a great opportunity for all of us to work together. So the Agricultural Innovation Mechanism for Scale, or AIM for Scale, came out of work that we were doing with the Innovation Commission that Michael chaired and Innovation Commission on Climate Change, Food Security, and Agriculture. The idea there is that there are innovations out there in the agricultural space that have shown great promise, that the evidence shows that they can work, that they can have a big effect on the lives and livelihoods of farmers, but they're not getting to millions of farmers. We've generated the evidence because of work with people like Michael, his colleagues that won the Nobel Prize. They transformed economics. So people like me, agricultural economists who started in the 90s, randomized control trials, those types of things were just starting. Now they dominate the field, and we're getting all this evidence. But the evidence is not good enough. We need to go from that evidence to start piloting these things and seeing if they work. Pilots are not good enough. We need to go from those pilots to something much bigger and reach millions of farmers. So the Aim for Scale was created with funding from the United Arab Emirates and the Gates Foundation to try to take this on. We've identified a number of innovations through the Innovation Commission that Michael might touch on, but we're focusing right now on three: AI-generated weather information, digital advisory services, and innovations that facilitate livestock productivity. We may go on to others, but those are the three we're focused on at this moment. The hope is that we could work together to scale those up through the Asian Development Bank projects. So later on, Michael will talk a bit about some of these innovations, particularly AI-generated weather information, and then we'll have two panels. One panel will talk about digital and weather, and the other panel will talk about livestock to show where we're at in those areas. Now, why this partnership with the Asian Development Bank? The Asian Development Bank has made an incredible commitment to agriculture, $40 billion over a very short period. And I hate to say this, but 15, 20 years ago, the Asian Development Bank was almost absent from agriculture. We could work at IFAD, and we used to help the Asian Development Bank work on agricultural projects. What a transformation. What a difference from 20 years ago when there was almost nothing in the agricultural sector to what is being built here now. And recognizing this sector is fundamental for development. So we see this as an incredible opportunity, given that emphasis at the Asian Development Bank on the agricultural sector. And it's recognition that countries do not develop unless agriculture productivity increases, and that the agricultural sector, yes, it'll eventually be a smaller proportion of GDP, a smaller proportion of employment, but ultimately it's fundamental to the broader transformation of economies. So we are here today to highlight this relationship that we're developing with the Asian Development Bank. We'll be signing an MOU that keeps us going and working together over the next few years. And the hope is that the ideas, the evidence that people like Michael, economists around the world are generating, that we can bring those into the projects and actually use that evidence to scale up the best approaches to development. Just to finally note, this is not a trivial undertaking. We're doing this type of work around the world. Michael's been doing it in India. Monica's also worked in India on a number of these things. We've already had some initial work in Bangladesh and Laos and started working on these things here. We're working in Ethiopia with the World Bank, in Colombia with the Inter-American Development Bank. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of coordination across different agencies to make sure people are working together. But with the convening power, the funding of a development bank like the Asian Development Bank, it is possible if you can keep focused on that ultimate objective, which is to make sure that you reach tens of millions, hundreds of millions of farmers with these types of innovations. So hopefully through this with the Asian Development Bank, we'll be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. So at this stage, we move to something that for me is a pleasure and an honor to have Michael talking at this session. You have been talking at many sessions in this forum, but you are a leading voice for rigorous science in the development world. And so I ask you to come and make your keynote speech. Thank you very much.
Great. It's a wonderful pleasure and an honor to be here to celebrate this partnership among government of Japan, among Asian Development Bank, Aim for Scale. All of these partners are committed to trying to take the benefits of technology, find areas where there's evidence of impact and cost effectiveness, and then work with governments to really bring them to scale and benefit millions of people around the world. And I'm very excited for anything I can do to help collaborate in that effort. I'm wearing a few hats here. I'm chair of the advisory commission for Aim for Scale advisory committee, and I also chair the Innovation Commission for Climate Change, Food Security, and Agriculture, as Paul mentioned. One of the things that the Innovation Commission did was it tried to review the evidence on a number of innovations in these areas for really rigorous evidence of impact, of cost effectiveness, and to do that not just for the innovation itself, but also for the potential to scale, as previous speakers have emphasized. We wanted to see, were there concrete actions that could be taken that would lead to use by farmers, because that's the ultimate objective. And we identified a number of innovations that had this property and have a number of recommendations. Some of them were in digital agriculture, innovations like AI-enabled weather forecasting, which I'll discuss more later, digital agriculture more broadly. There are also technologies coming out of biology, like microbial fertilizer, and there were social innovations like payments for ecosystem services or innovative lending and insurance products for farmers. One of the hypotheses in the commission was very much about this goal that previous speakers have emphasized of trying to reach scale. And the hypothesis was that if there was a focus on starting with weather forecasting, that these innovations that had very high returns but weren't yet scaling, that a concerted effort to work with partners, to share the evidence with them, to then provide technical assistance of various types, and to have continuous engagement could help promote the scaling. And that perhaps, and we heard from policymakers interest in a lot of these innovations, but perhaps the strongest interest was in weather forecasting. And I think that's because it's something that farmers want, it's because it's relatively inexpensive to deliver, and because it's digital, it can be delivered to farmers very, very quickly. So, I'll sort of sketch out that process. And as Paul emphasized, this started in part with the evidence. There's evidence from around the world of multiple studies that farmers respond to weather forecasts when the evidence is, when they receive the forecasts, they change their agricultural behavior. There's evidence that this is cost effective. It's cost effective not just in general, but because of the substantial benefits and the very low cost. But it's particularly important when farmers are hit with shocks, including weather and climate shocks. So one study in India found, and my notes are not showing up, so I'll do this from memory. But Tomoko, please tell me if I've got this wrong. The benefits, I think, were between of a digital agriculture system in general in Odisha, India, were around between $5 and $12 roughly. But in the areas that were hit by weather shocks in particular, the benefits were more like in the $40 range. And really, that was what drove a lot of the benefits when people got unusual weather, and then they got advice about how they could respond to that. So we worked closely with the government of India, providing various types of technical assistance. That included some technical assistance on the AI weather front. So there are multiple fortunate thing about AI weather is there are multiple open access systems made by some of the leading companies, made by some of the leading research institutes around the world. We were able to check how well those performed in not just in, as the companies do, checking global performance, but specifically, how do they do in forecasting the variables that are important to farmers in India, in particular monsoon onset forecasts. Turned out they did pretty well. It also then turned out that by blending multiple models together, you could do better than any one model on itself. Shared some of these results with the government of India, as well as, of course, earlier research. In 2024, together with, Amara Salas played an important role in this, from Aim for Scale, the government of India did what for them is a pilot, scaling this up to 9 million farmers. And then in 2025, they switched, because of the technological development of AI forecasts, they switched over to AI forecasts and sent this to 38 million farmers. Forecasts turned out to be predictive of a very unusual monsoon season, where the monsoon progressed halfway up India, then paused, and for 2 weeks, and farmers wouldn't have known about that other than through the AI forecast. So this was very successful. I think I think there's a lot of interest in this. Asian Development Bank has been a leader, pledging at the last COP to $300 million in funding to support provision of weather forecasts and agrometeorological advice to farmers in Asia. We've been working with Monica and Qingfeng on trying to reach out, and including to, obviously there's a lot more that could be done in India over time. Monsoon forecasts are just one type of forecast. Laos, there's a lot of progress has been made there, and we're very interested in outreach to Bangladesh as well, and had some early conversations where there was expressions of interest. I don't mean expressions of interest in some formal technical sense, just in the normal language meaning of that. I think this is one example, but as Paul noted, there's many other areas. Weather, I think, can be a great entry point into digital agriculture more broadly, because it's demanded by farmers and can be provided relatively inexpensively. The information can be gathered pretty quickly. But then more things can be layered on top of that. So, for example, soil chemistry information. As Qingfeng mentioned, fertilizer is really in shortage right now. Well, there are some cases in which farmers are overusing fertilizer. And if farmers have information on exactly what their soil chemistry is, then they know which fertilizer they need, and they know which they don't need, and maybe overuse could be reduced. Or another example would be pest alerts. If farmers know what the pests are that they're facing, and they could get that information digitally and interactively, then they can avoid using pesticides that they don't need, and they can learn about a range of different approaches for controlling pests. And there's evidence in both the soil chemistry and the pest alerts that farmers respond to this information. And there are also other opportunities, like connecting out farmers with other parts of the value chain digitally. I was involved in a study in Kenya where farmers they were contract farmers. They relied on inputs from the company they were dealing with. Those inputs would sometimes arrive too late to be used or wouldn't arrive at all, and the farmers had to still pay for those inputs. The message wasn't reaching the company fast enough. The company set up a hotline that greatly improved timely delivery of fertilizer to the farmers and other inputs. There are opportunities for farmers to connect with each other. There's also this is early stage evidence, but of remarkable improvements in farm outcomes from simple behavioral interventions that, for example, can increase savings rates. Those have been tried elsewhere in the world and been found to be very successful. They have to be tried in Asia and to learn what the impacts here, but those could potentially very inexpensively lead to substantial improvements in welfare and in production. So I think there's a really bright path ahead, and I'm very excited about the work that the Asian Development Bank, that the government of Japan, and that Aim for Scale are doing on this. And I look forward. I've very much enjoyed our collaboration so far, and I look forward to collaborating further going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now proceed with the official event of signature of the cooperation agreement between ADB and Aim for Scale. For us, this agreement really established formally the foundation for collaboration and want to signal our shared commitment. And I'm looking at Paul particularly. So I will now ask Qingfeng Zhang and Professor Paul Winter to come on to the stage to sign the cooperation agreement. Okay, thank you. So Professor Kremer and Edie will be our witnesses standing near the signatories. Everything's ready. Thank you. And with that, we are now turning to our first panel discussion. So I want to introduce you to Imara Salas, Secretariat Director of the Aim for Scale, which will moderate. And this panel will explore innovation in digital and weather advisory services. Imara?
Thank you so much, Monica, and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you to the participants joining us virtually as well. We had a busy start to the session with the agreement signing and our wonderful speakers. So I will keep introduction brief so we can move on to the second half of this event. We'll have two panels today. As Monica mentioned, our first panel will focus on weather and digital advisory services for farmers. And our second panel will focus on livestock innovations. As Paul mentioned, that's the latest area of focus for Aim for Scale, so we will hear a little bit more about that. Then we will close with remarks from Noel O'Brien, Chief of the Climate Change and Disaster Risk Management Division at ADB. So first, let me introduce our panelists for today. We have joining us virtually from Delhi, Secretary Pramod Mehrdha, Additional Secretary of India's Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers' Welfare. Secretary Mehrdha oversees AgriStack and PM Kisan, which together reach about 90 million farmers. So if we can get the Zoom shown on the screen, that would be wonderful. Also joining us virtually, we have Professor Diana Francis, atmospheric and climate scientist and head of the Environmental and Geophysical Sciences Lab at Khalifa University in the United Arab Emirates. Diana is also a member of Aim for Scale Technical Panel on Weather Services for Farmers and has been instrumental in helping us develop this agenda. Joining us today in person, we have Tomoko Harigaya, Chief Economist and Director of Research at Precision Development. Tomoko, if you could join us on stage. Tomoko has designed, implemented, and evaluated digital agriculture programs for smallholder farmers across Africa and Asia, so we'll share more about her experience with us. And also we have Tim Krupnik, Director of the CGIAR Scaling for Impact program, with more than 2 decades of experience connecting agricultural research with on-the-ground delivery. The thread running through this panel is a practical one. We know that we have the tools and that there is farmer demand. But what else do we need to do to take digital advisory services to scale? So to get us started, Secretary Mehrdha, AgriStack is providing advisory services to dozens of millions of farmers across India, which is a remarkable achievement and an example of what governments around the world can do. What are the next steps, in your view, to enabling AgriStack to provide weather advisory services to farmers at a national scale?
Thank you, Ms. Mara, and a very good morning to all the esteemed participants. Well, let me briefly frame this in terms of where we are today and where we are going in the future. So while reaching, and let me also clarify for the participants that PM Kisan is a scheme. It's a scheme which gives direct benefit to farmers, 6,000 rupees per year, and the amount is transferred directly to their Aadhaar enabled bank account. So we have an Aadhaar system also here. And AgriStack is a separate system. AgriStack is where we are generating farmer IDs, where we are connecting the farmer with his or her land, the crops grown every season, and then the livestock and the fishery assets that they have. So together, this is a digital public infrastructure which actually creates a foundational database and a dynamic database, because it is based on registries, the concept of registries and not database itself. So it becomes a single source of truth for all the information that you require for a farmer. Of course, that information can be accessed only through a consent manager by the farmer only, and can be shared with others only if the farmer consents. So there are data privacy and sharing issues around it. So these are two different things, PM Kisan and AgriStack. Why PM Kisan is being mentioned here is because PM Kisan today has a large database, not registries, of farmers who are being given benefits. So when we initiated the weather advisories last year, the AgriStack at that time wasn't so much developed. The farmer IDs, today we have 92 million farmer IDs across the country. But that time it was almost half. So we thought of using PM Kisan database to trigger messages to the farmers on weather advisory, particularly the monsoon forecast. So these are two different systems. So now, and why I had to explain this, because the what PM Kisan, what AgriStack can do, PM Kisan cannot do. PM Kisan was just used for weather advisories and forecasts. So today, we also have a repository of which we collect every season. And now, last 4 seasons, we have been collecting that almost 300 million plot-wise crop details. And so we are now ready from moving from broad advisories to truly high precision, hyper local intelligence. So now what we need to do in going ahead is 3, 4 things. One is that data enrichment today is very, very critical. So if we are talking of AI, we must have a enriched data, curated data, and structured data. And so we are strengthening AgriStack by integrating high resolution weather data from IMD, from ISRO, satellite imageries. We are also collecting soil health parameters. We do have a soil profile mapping, national soil profile mapping program also. And of course, the real-time crop conditions at the farm level. So the convergence with the systems, like we also have another geospatial DPI, which we have created, which we call Krishi DSS. Krishi means agriculture, and DSS is decision support system. So it has a lot of thematic layers on collecting all these parameters together. It has developed a lot of thematic layers on drought, on flood inundation, on pest, on soil moisture, etc. So all of these are now key databases which can be integrated, and a lot of AI systems can be developed. Second, we are focusing on developing sovereign agri-LLMs. So we have the language that our farmers speak in India, the way they speak, the practices that we have in India are unique. So we need to have our own agri-LLM, a sovereign LLM, and AI model sophistications have to be built on that. So and then, of course, using till that time that we have our own agri-LLM and AI models, we are, of course, using other AI models. And in case of AI-based weather advisories, particularly the monsoon forecast, which Michael just described in a lot of detail, we have already demonstrated proof of scale last year when we delivered AI-based localized monsoon onset advisories to nearly 38 million farmers with up to 3 weeks lead time. So, and it was received very well with a lot of impact. We also did a lot of, we contacted the farmers who had used it, and they in fact said that we were highly benefited with it and that they would like to continue with it. And so this all established both demand from the farmers and the impact, sorry. So now the next step is to move from a pilot, highly scaled pilot, to a fully integrated high precision advisory ecosystems. When we take learnings from the weather-based forecast that we did last year. So all this includes developing location-specific, crop-specific, and the state-specific advisories, moving from district levels to village levels, and eventually plot level actionable insights. We have those capabilities now. So AI models will also incorporate all these predictive capabilities, such as which Michael again mentioned about pest outbreaks or pest weather forecast, pest forecast, or extreme weather forecast or events. Third, and equally important, is the last mile personalization and delivery. So we have we've recently launched an initiative which I don't know if some of you might have heard about, is the Bharat Vistar. And Vistar means a virtually integrated system to access agricultural resources, which means that all these resources, all these information in agriculture ecosystem, whether it is scientific package of practices or weather or pest or soil or geospatial data, or you have schemes, information, scheme services, grievances, all of this, if you integrate at one place, the farmer just needs to open one app or call one system and get all his information, system, schemes, grievances, package of practices addressed at one place. And the last mile would mean that in many cases you have to reach out to the small and marginal farmers in India, where many of them may not have a smartphone. So even a feature phone works here. You dial 155 261 and the farmer gets connected to the system from anywhere in the country and can call and get information on agriculture, ICRs, agriculture, scientific agriculture practices, or scheme informations, and register grievances. And this we launched very recently on 17th of February with the phase 1 version. And then phase 2 would mean that we are going to connect with a lot of state systems also, so that you get hyper local and contextual information also. And so here the emerging AI-driven dissemination systems such as text-to-voice telephony, Bhashini, in our case, the Agri-LLM, the LLM language, the LLM, the IITM's Indian Institute of Tropical Medicine's Mausamwani, all allow us to deliver voice-based advisories in local language across both smartphones and basic phones, as I just mentioned. The real shift here is from generic forecast to context-aware advisories linked to farmer's identity, which is available in AgriStack, crop, livestock, and location data. All of that is in AgriStack. Finally, we see this as a collaborative ecosystem of effort where we are working closely with IMD, the ISRO, academia, market price systems, and agri-tech startups to continuously improve accuracy and usability. So, in a sense, the next phase is about integrating advanced AI science, the institutional systems, and the digital public infrastructures like the AgriStack, the Krishi Decision Support System, the soil profile maps, the pest advisories, etc., to deliver truly personalized, high precision advisories for every farmer in India. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Secretary, and thank you for joining us so early. I know that it's the early morning in India. This is truly inspiring. You touched on a number of points that I hope will come up in the panel today. And truly, I think India is setting an example for many other countries around the world that look at you, see this experience, and want to replicate it. So it's a motivational speech that you just shared with us. Turning to one of the points that you just mentioned on AI weather forecasting, I would like to dive a little deeper with our other speaker joining us virtually. Diana, you have worked on weather forecasting and AI weather forecasting for some time. We're seeing rapid advances in artificial intelligence for AI weather forecasting models. Could you briefly explain what is changing in the field and why it matters for delivering information to farmers in particular?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm really honored and pleased to witness this agreement first, but also to take part in this panel. So to answer your question, Imara, I think since 2 years, 2 or 3 years, I think AI for weather forecast has been a game changer in the field, both on the operation but also on the impact side. There are 3 main areas where really AI helped us as scientists on weather forecast to overcome big challenges that we were facing before and were limiting the use of forecast even. Those are mainly, for instance, the speed and cost that we traditionally have with numerical weather prediction models that are really huge models, needs to have a specific setup to be run, and we cannot run it on a simple computer or a local, resources. So this with AI has been really solved as a problem, because now with AI you can run even on a app or simple computer. The second area where AI really helps scientists to improve the weather forecast and make it more impactful is basically the skillful forecast, because now even with a lead time of a few weeks, we can have precision and skillful forecast to basically deliver to farmers or any other end users with confidence, which basically will increase the trust in numerical weather forecast using AI and will also increase users for those applications. The third main area is precision and localization. So we are not anymore talking about the rain, it will rain in this region or it will rain in this country. We are now talking about the level of a farm. So this also is enabled by AI weather forecast, basically being able to have precision about the forecast, the weather in a specific location, which basically is really important for application like agriculture.
Thank you so much, Diana. Oh, sorry. Please go ahead.
So I wanted just to mention that with AI forecast, basically what it changed for farmers specifically is the fact that now they are able to say when, for example, to plant or to irrigate, which ultimately will save resources because we don't irrigate whenever it's not needed, for instance. The second answer is basically when they apply fertilizers or pesticides, or they can, investigate the health of their soil, but also how they can manage the risk from extreme weather events. Because now, if they are alerted well in advance about any extreme event, whether it is flooding or droughts, then they will be able to, save their agriculture, save their crops, and this has been, shown to be really very important application in several countries around the world. Of course, you mentioned India in the previous talks, and also there are other countries. We can give, for example, the case of Kenya, where a lot now of integration of AI weather forecast is being basically done on the ground, and platforms are being developed in order to communicate this information effectively and in the right time to the farmers. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say today about this topic. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Diana. I think summarizing all that you said, AI is really democratizing access to more accurate and faster forecasts in low and middle income countries, which provides huge opportunities for farmers. But I want to bring it back to something that Secretary Maherda said earlier related to the last mile. So we can have the best forecasts in the world, but if we don't get them to farmers, they won't have the impact that we are seeking. And this is strongly related to the work that Tim and Tomoko have done for many years now. Tim, I'll start with you. The Scaling for Impact program and Aim for Scale recently got into a new partnership to take innovations to scale, including digital advisory services and climate information services in particular. Could you share a little bit more about that partnership with us?
Sure. I'd be very pleased to. By way of a tiny bit of background, I represent the CGIAR Scaling for Impact program, which is a new program that CGIAR has unveiled across the 12 CGIAR centers that do research on agricultural and food systems applications globally, but is the first time in history that the CGIAR has put scaling in the forefront and basically identified that it's not enough for us just to do the highest quality science, write papers and do workshops and disseminate information and evidence, but there's a strong responsibility to actually roll up our sleeves and interact through partners and develop pathways by which that science can be applied on the ground reliably and sustainably. And that's a goal that basically we share very strongly with Aim for Scale that tries to do exactly the same thing. So it's been a partnership that has worked very well. And we've started work with Sport of Aim for Scale through UAE, specifically on 2 applications in countries, both in Bangladesh and in Kenya, that focus on last mile delivery of climate information services for all of the reasons that we've heard about today. So I'll talk very briefly about each one of these applications. The work in Bangladesh is through an application that we have been developing for a number of years called Agvisely, and it's a partnership that has existed between the Bangladesh Meteorological Department and the Department of Agricultural Extension and the CGIAR centers that are operating within Bangladesh, where we identified the need to be able to rapidly provide downscaled, reliable, hyperlocal evidence and information to farmers at a large scale. We are still working through numerical weather forecasts because the Bangladesh Medical Department still utilizes these systems, although Aim for Scale is in discussion about updating and using AI approaches for this. But what we've been able to do, working closely with the Met Department, is downscale those forecasts so we can produce on a 3-hourly basis for all 496 sub-districts of the country hyper-local information with respect to temperature regimes and precipitation and humidity indices. Now, very often in the development of climate services, this would be when a government would convene a group of expert panels and esteemed agronomists and pathologists that would then try to write what kind of advisories might be necessary for farmers. We took it a step further, though, where we did systematic literature reviews of now 9 crop species, 3 livestock species, and 2 aquacultural species that are of significant food security and economic importance to the country and to farmers within the country. And we've identified thresholds for high and low temperature regimes and identified through the scientific literature and evidence available what the best ways might be for farmers to react, and we've built that into the system. And so what the system is now currently delivering, again, it's running as we speak every 3 hours for all 365 days per year for all 495 sub-districts within the country, a hyperlocal forecast that, if triggered by a particular species that farmers may be cultivating in that location for higher or low temperature regimes or a precipitation anomaly, we then disseminate an advisory. Now, the dissemination channel for that advisory is through typically the Department of Agricultural Extension. And that was an important piece of work in terms of confidence building around use of these systems. So we actually took efforts to train about 8,700 extension agents on how to utilize and disseminate these advisories. And in doing so, we also worked with the farmer organizations that the Extension Department is working to deploy the advisories through. And what we have found so far in this case, the first season that we ran the system, we reached 500,000 farmers. And that wasn't just reach of giving advice, but we had population level evidence data that farmers were indeed changing their behaviors. They were just changing when they irrigated. They were changing pest management practices. They were changing behaviors in ways that we did also not expect from the advice that we were providing, which was an interesting research outcome. And as we've progressed with the system, we've now seen that it is being used by about 1.5 million farmers, and we're on track with support from Aim for Scale for reaching what we hope would be 30% of the farming population of Bangladesh with these localized advisories within the next 2 years. So we're working to bring it to scale. The other aspect of the work that we're doing with Aim for Scale takes a leaf from that learning, but it's deployed in Kenya, which was just mentioned as well, where there's an Aim for Scale collaboration with the Kenya Meteorological Department about utilizing AI advisories. And what we are doing work there through CIAT primarily is work to target 6 million farmers. And when I say farmers, I mean farmers at large. These are crop farmers. They are livestock herders, they are pastoralists, and working to deploy for 20 different agriculturally relevant species advisories that can be utilized by farmers within country. And a key piece that's important for both the Bangladesh example and the Kenya example is embedding these in large-scale government-led development programs that are in many cases supported by multilateral development bank investments. So the team in Kenya, for example, is working to insert these approaches into World Bank financed projects that are operational in both countries. And a last piece before I'll turn over is improvement of the advice. And so we have, and I'm glad that colleagues from Precision Development are speaking next because we learned from them in this approach, is the use of A/B testing and very simple informatics to improve the reliability of the kinds of information that's being disseminated. So we have deployed in both countries and are learning to do this, slight adjustments in the wording, the phrasing, the timing of the advice that is being deployed, how we advise extension agents and so on through short testing to understand and improve, again, through an evidence-based and scientifically relevant pathway, improvements in the kind of dissemination that we are doing. So that gives you an early example of the exciting work that's underway.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tim. That's a perfect segue for my next question to Tomoko. Tomoko, PXD is a close partner across many of the countries that we've worked on. Could you share a little bit more about the work that we're doing and about PXD more broadly?
Absolutely. And Tim, actually, it's great to hear that, we've had years of conversations and it seems like we are converging to, similar models. So looking forward to further collaboration opportunities. But let me start with the PXD more broadly. So Precision Development, or PXD, is a global nonprofit that works with governments to scale evidence-based innovations and information services to smallholder farmers. And our approach, like what Tim just talked about, is to really work through government channels. So that means, embedding alongside government partners and, supporting them in kind of strengthening technology platforms, maybe designing and improving information content and messages based on farmer feedback, testing what works, and then critically, like rooting these services in how governments work for long-term sustainability. And PXD's specific role kind of varies by context depending on the needs. So in some places, we work as a direct implementer on behalf of government. In other places, we work as a learning partner or an embedded advisory team within the government. And, our starting point, I think, Paul articulated this earlier, is that there are a lot of innovations and information that are already out there and exist, right, that farmers can use to make better decisions, like better seeds, better planting methods, better weather information. But a lot of the times the information doesn't reach reliably to smallholder farmers at the right time, in a form that they can actually use. So our collaboration with InfoScale, again, has really centered around that last mile delivery challenge. So, working with researchers and public institutions that generate scientific information like weather forecasts, and governments that are responsible for disseminating them. So PXD kind of sit in the middle and working with both parties to design rigorous messages or stress test the dissemination platforms, and then really ensuring that farmer feedback to that loops back into design decisions. So I think a couple concrete examples. In India, we are supporting, the Ministry of Agriculture on the dissemination of monsoon onset forecasts. And the forecast was, provided 15 to 30 days of advance notice. And that was really important because that's the kind of lead time that farmers needed in order to make planting adjustments. In Ethiopia, similarly, we are working with governments right now to prepare for the dissemination of forecasts for rainy season onset, targeting 200,000 farmers as a pilot, but really looking at 10, 15 million farmers over the next couple of years. And I think in both contexts, how we think about our role or what we bring is that maybe practitioner knowledge of how to move science or scientific information through government systems and get them into the hands of smallholder farmers in the way that they can use.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tomoko and Tim. It's really wonderful to be here with you, with two great partners as we start this new partnership with ADB. We are running a little short on time, so I will do one final question for all panelists. And I would love to hear briefly in a minute or so, what are the critical steps in your view that can ensure that weather information reaches farmers and becomes actionable? This can be investments, tests, etc. Starting with Secretary Meherda, if we still have him online.
Well,
perfect.
Well, that's a very important question, and so today, from India's experience, if you take the challenges today, no longer proving innovation. So it is scaling its sustainability and sustainably and systemically. So what we today need is that at the national level, we have capacities and capabilities that we have built, but what is required is that at the regional level, at the states level, also support is provided for moving on from innovations to infrastructure. So where, for instance, like ADB is providing us technical support on critical components of agri-stack, such as the network manager, the consent manager, the unified farmer service interface. So all of these today, help us, launching initiatives like Bharat Vistar at scale. And so what is now needed is that we have investments which are sustainable. We have models which are, and the funding and the financing which is sustainable. And the way these investments are channelized, through the states and with high quality data behind it. So all of this is very important for strengthening, coordination and building institutions. Is what we emphasize, that wherever we have enabled a system or we are linking DPIs with emerging technologies, institutions need to be built to carry it forward and on a sustainable basis. So linking all of this research, policy, and implementation is something which is the need of the hour.
Excellent. Thank you so much. We also see that need for coordination in a very salient manner in the work that we've been doing. So thank you for flagging. Diana?
Yes, I think capacity building is the foundation for this, the whole system, the whole chain to work. So basically investing in having skilled staff who are able to both run the AI models, but also to interpret data, do the verification, being able to translate forecast into sector-specific products, for example, and useful information, because this is what we want at the end, going from hard science to useful information for farmers. So I think having the skilled people in place, wherever we are, country we are targeting, it's really very important. Another aspect is, and we should not forget that we still need to invest in data collection. This is very important because AI models are very hungry for data, and we cannot say, okay, now we have AI models and we stop, investing in good data networks for feeding these models and also validating whatever forecast we have. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Diana. Now moving to the farmer side of this equation. Tim, what are the critical steps for you in this enabling environment?
So there's 5 things that I thought through that I want to focus on. The first one is, as we've spoken about today, is encouraging government ownership of these systems, not just government endorsement. There is a very important difference in terms of the leadership and sustainability of the work that's done if you think about things that way. The second point is investing in last mile delivery architecture. So that might be deploying things through short messaging services. It might be through use of interactive voice response systems. It might be through really taking time to train extension agents and make sure that they're a conduit of information. But investing in the last mile is really crucial. The third point, as I mentioned earlier, is where possible, embedding these systems in large-scale development efforts. So piggybacking on large-scale programs that are being implemented, very often with the backing of international finance organizations, is a conduit for being able to reach scale that small projects that probably could not reach on their own. A fourth point is investing in translation. Very often, if you ask a scientist, a climatologist, a soil scientist, a pathologist to give advice to farmers, you will get information that's hyper-technical and not always very clear for the intended end user. It's very important to invest in translation processes and making sure that we're disseminating information in ways that farmers can understand. And that's, again, where testing different responses can be very useful for fine-tuning the way in which we communicate relevant information to the users that we want to benefit from this work. And the last part, which has not been addressed today in the panel, but for us is a very crucial aspect, is also integration of the private sector. In some of the countries that we work in, there's a vibrant private sector that's getting interested in extension services and advising farmers. And so one light way that we've tried to do that is to make the APIs behind these tools available to the private sector. In Bangladesh, for example, we're in conversations with insurance companies that want to use the architecture behind the system I described to de-risk investments in insurance schemes that they're looking at piloting with farmers. And so being on the lookout for private opportunities to expand scale, I think, is also very relevant.
Thank you so much, Tim. Tomoko?
I think that was pretty comprehensive, but let me just add one angle to it. I think what we really believe is that what determines the impact of these services is whether we've built an effective feedback mechanisms. And again, this is not just about getting, of course, about qualitatively getting farmer feedback and asking them, how they use the information, and so forth, but also looking at the engagement data, how the farmers are actually using the service, maybe doing experimentation, A/B testing around design elements. All of that need to really loop back into the decisions that we are making on the service provider side, how the information is generated, translated, the choice of dissemination channels and so forth. So that's what links, I think, all the different pieces.
Excellent. Thank you both so much. And thank you so much, Secretary Meherda and Diana, for joining us virtually. It's been a pleasure to learn from you today and to hear more about your work. So we really appreciate your presence here.
Pleasure.
Get a round of applause. Now we will move on to our second panel of the day. Thank you so much. We will have to be a little bit quicker moving through this panel. So I will call our panelists on stage today, since we have them all here in person. Tini Sawhney is Chief Executive of the Aga Khan Foundation in India, with vast experience in rural livelihood development, smallholder livestock, and climate-resilient agriculture. Tini is working closely with Aim for Scale in developing our new livestock innovation package. Then we have Owen Murphy, who leads the agriculture team at the Embassy of Ireland. Owen's work spans market access, agri-tech, and sustainable food systems. Finally, we have Dustin Shin, Water Resources Specialist at ADB, currently working on loans and technical assistance in Mongolia, China, India, and Bangladesh. To kick us off, I'll wait for Dustin to join us. Thank you so much all for being here. It's a real pleasure. Owen, could you tell us a little bit more about AgNav and how this platform translates that data into practical advisories for farmers?
Thank you. So AgNav is Ireland's digital agriculture sustainability platform. It's a mix between digital advisory and livestock productivity systems that we have in place already. Let me start by saying that this is all in the context of Ireland setting an ambitious climate target of reducing agriculture greenhouse gas emissions by 25%. Ireland is mostly, our agriculture system is mostly a livestock system. For those of you who maybe are less familiar with Ireland and St. Patrick's Day, Ireland is a small island country on the west coast of the EU. We have about 5 million people, 5 million sheep, and 7 million cattle. So for us, our livestock sector is extremely important. It's about 7% of our GDP, 7% of our employment, but it accounts for 70% of our agricultural GHG emissions and 30% of our national total. So for us, livestock farming is very, very important. That's at the high level. And then at a practical level, we've set this target. Farmers are asking, well, what difference can I make on my farm to contribute to this overall target? So we introduced AgNav. It's a voluntary platform. It's free to use for farmers. It combines data-driven insights with farm advice services. It allows farmers access to the best quality data and the best quality advice, and ultimately to implement practical changes on their farms. So how does it work? There are 3 steps in the process, 3 A's: assess, analyse, and act. Assess, we already have farm-level data for a whole variety of indicators. So we have combined all of that data and we're using it to calculate on-farm, farm-level emission factors, including greenhouse gas emissions, ammonia and fertilizer use, nutrient balance and soil carbon for individual farms. The second is analyze. We're helping farmers to use an inbuilt forecasting tool to test this data, to test a range of different management practices, each which will have a different environmental impact on their own farm. And finally, act. So farmers will be the best decision makers to decide on sustainable and suitable actions for their farms, and they develop a farm-specific sustainability plan. So I might finish by saying that really what we found here is that farmers want confidence when it comes to making decisions on their farm, confidence in the data, confidence in the tool, confidence in the actions that we're offering them and the impact that those actions might have. So I think really digital platforms, we've learned two guiding principles. The first is that digital tools work best when linked with advisory services, where advisors can help farmers to interpret the information and give them confidence to advocate those actions on their own farm and with other farmers in their communities. And two, digital tools must be a nationally aligned source of truth for farm-level environmental indicators, mostly helping to translate those big high-level climate targets into really practical solutions and actions that farmers can take on their own farms.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Owen. Dustin, you work in very different contexts, jumping from digital platforms to policy innovations. Based on your experience on livestock systems in China and Mongolia, what policy innovations offer the greatest potential?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for the question. It's a privilege to be here with you today. Just wanted to discuss briefly outcomes from a technical assistance project, which we recently concluded with the Chinese Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Affairs and the Chinese Academy of Agricultural Sciences, looking at ways in which we can reduce methane emissions from livestock. Why is that important? Because methane emissions are a lot more potentious compared to the traditional carbon emissions. And of course, livestock, for example, in Mongolia, we have more than 70 million livestock. In China also, livestock comprised the most important part of the Chinese methane emission portfolio. So reducing methane emissions can really ameliorate climate change in the near term and contribute to our achievement of the Paris Agreement. In that sense, traceability systems can play an important role and also provide consumers with a choice to opt for more sustainable low-emission products. Now, there can be trade-offs between reducing emissions on the one side and productivity on the other side. So some technologies and practices that reduce methane emissions may enhance productivity. Some others may decrease productivity. And of course, there's also a consideration at play in terms of which technologies and practices are more practical compared to others, are more suitable to be implemented on the ground and adopted by farmers. The low-hanging fruit in this regard is improving intensity. That means improving emission intensity and enhancing productivity. So that's a very straightforward solution in which, for example, emissions from beef in China could be reduced by 17% if the average beef yield per animal would be increased to that of the European Union or the United States, Canada, or Australia. So that means use of high production efficiency animals, which mean no lower number of livestock total, but heavier ones that would impact less emissions per unit of output, whether that be dairy or meat. Other very impactful practices that are already widely adopted, which we could support among also with traceability systems, include the use of total mixed rations for dairy cattle, anaerobic digestion with biodigesters or covered lagoons, for example, the separation of liquid solid manure and composting and aeration of manure as well. These options can, through traceability systems, be passed on to consumers who may be willing to apply a premium, for example, and also be connected to financial incentives. In addition, we could also add some matured practices that offer high emission reduction potential but have been adopted less frequently to date, such as supplementing diet with dietary nitrate.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I think the point on reducing emission intensity resonates a lot with Aim for Scale and the work that we have been doing, which is a great segue to you, Tini. Could you please tell us about some of the innovations that the Aim for Scale Livestock Innovation Package is focusing on, and why these were chosen?
Really honored to be here, today, and also to be here when the partnership agreement was signed just a short while ago. So, I mean, livestock really sits at the heart of food systems. I mean, the immense contribution that livestock makes to household nutrition, the immense contribution that livestock also makes to sustainable agriculture. I mean, how can we improve soil health if we did not have our livestock? And also the contribution to climate resilience. We've seen, and also in my country, India, where farmers have livestock, they are much more resilient to the impacts of climate change. Also, the role of women in livestock. I mean, this year is the year of the woman farmer, and just from my own country, almost 70% of all of the work in the livestock sector is done by women. These are therefore the lens that we are looking at innovations. How can we improve livestock productivity through better nutrition? How can we adopt improved practices? How can we improve biosecurity on farms to eliminate the impact of zoonotic diseases? Strengthening the last mile delivery of services to the livestock keepers, services where they need them, when they need them, and in a cost-effective and a sustainable manner. As we strengthen livestock value chains, as Dustin spoke about, how could we do better on record keeping and traceability? For grazing herds, how can we think of rotational grazing to protect grassland? So I think these are the lens that we are looking at in the Aim for Scale livestock part. Some of the innovations that we have piloted in our work relate to the last mile delivery of preventive health services, ensuring access to timely, sustainable, quality services that prevent disease occurrence and spread. In India, we've piloted a cadre of trained women paravets that provide services against a fee to livestock keepers, and this entrepreneurial cadre has actually consistently provided the services, and we've also seen the scale up through the national mission for rural livelihoods. The reason and we're now building on this very strong front line that exists to also look at advisory services around better feed to reduce methane emissions, which again Dustin spoke about. Fodder silage. We also see in the region that we work in times when green fodder is very much available during the monsoons. How can we actually promote fodder silage so that good quality fodder can be available throughout the year? Better feed will also strengthen reproductive cycles, reducing the dry period that dairy animals face. So I think these are some of the innovations. Breeding is another area. Protecting biodiversity. Our region has a wealth of diverse breeds. How can we ensure that genetic potential also sustains? So breeding is another lens that we look at. We're also looking at ethno-veterinary approaches. For some diseases, particularly mastitis, there is a sustainable cure in ethno-veterinary practices. So these are the various lenses that we are looking at. Nutrition to improve productivity, reduce methane emission intensity, access to quality, timely care to the last mile.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tini. So we have all of these innovations out there. There's a fair amount of evidence that they can work. What do we need to do to move from pilots to national scale? I will ask you all the same question, given that we're short on time. And if you could get started perhaps in 1 minute.
1 minute, okay, that's... Okay, so maybe let me focus on 4 things that we've learned from AgNav. So the first, I list the 4 in case I forget any, you can remind me. Voluntary, listening, a link to advice, which is mentioned already, and trust. So first, voluntary participation has been, and I think is a key incentive for a lot of these platforms. Of course, you run the risk of walking a tightrope with trying to get key stakeholders to engage on a voluntary basis. But we have found that it does help to keep everyone honest and focused and avoiding any threats of penalties. And for our farmers, that has been a priority. The second is that we really do listen to our farmers. We encourage them to openly talk and discuss amongst themselves the actions that they've taken on their farm and the feedback that they have themselves from their own behavioural changes. We ask them to talk about it in discussion groups. AgNav is about supporting farmers' decision making. It's not just about measuring performance. And farmers are key to co-designing AgNav, everything from what environmental factors do we prioritise to simple things like where do you put a button on a screen. So the programme is specifically designed to ensure constant feedback from farmers and industry. Third, I think, is linking the farm advice and support. Farmers are much more likely to use a platform when they understand it and they feel confident and comfortable talking about it in their communities. And finally, trust and transparency have to be fundamental, and we've spent a lot of time thinking about data governance. So maybe let me finish on the data governance piece, because I think it's really relevant to digital tools and to scaling. Farmers are doing a lot of work. We've already heard that farmers are generating a lot of data. Data needs to be collected for these systems to work. In Ireland, we used to say that milk was white liquid gold. But now, today, we all know that data is gold. Data is where money is, and it's highly valuable, and somewhere someone is making profits. And I think when we're designing digital tools, we need to remember to prioritise providing a fair and honest return to farmers for the data that they're providing us.
Great, thank you so much. Tini, how do we move from pilots to scale in 1 minute?
So quickly, investing in evidence, I think that's going to be really, really important, because when you get the evidence, you know what approaches work and what you can really scale up. Investing in better inputs, from the livestock space, things like thermostable vaccines can go a long way in strengthening last mile delivery. Digital services and facilitating access to these services, that's going to be critical. How do we have the digital platforms in place, and how do we ensure access? The sustainability of services and extension. We often see that the systems are in place, but they don't sustain after some time. The sustainability will come from these being market-led, from having farmers pay for these services, livestock keepers pay for these services, and we've seen that really happen. And also supporting knowledge learning and sharing platforms. I think that will be very important to take the pilots to scale.
Thank you so much. Dustin?
Thank you. I believe that one of the most important barriers to scaling up low emission practices, for example, in Mongolia and China and certainly other countries, is access to capital for farmers to invest in technology, infrastructure, new equipment, and so forth. In addition to lack of capital itself, is also lack of financial incentives, of course, for farmers to change these practices in case if desired solutions are more costly than traditional practices. We will also need to provide financial support for technologies and practices with high upfront costs. So again, finance from different perspectives as one of the most important key barriers to reach scale. So if I had one recommendation, a single most catalytic and impactful action item to take away from this, it would be to link agriculture with national emissions trading. As a primary system, carbon finance can catalyze finance at scale and ensure that it also trickles down to where it is needed most. Traceability systems can help with that when combined with emissions trading. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much to all of our panelists. Tini, Owen, Dustin, thank you so much. We will now proceed with our final closing speaker. So let me hand it over to Noel O'Brien Chief of the Climate Change and Disaster Risk Management Thematic Group at ADB, for closing remarks.
Thank you very much. And I think there's a title for me that's about 3 years old, so it's okay. I'm Director of Climate Change within the Climate Change and Sustainable Development Department. But colleagues, partners, and friends, so thank you for the energizing and forward-looking discussion this morning. What we've heard from governments, researchers, innovators, and development partners makes one message unmistakably clear, and that is that scaling innovation is no longer a technical aspiration, it is an operational necessity for achieving climate resilience and food security across Asia and the Pacific. So across today's session, several themes have come through strongly. First is the region's demand is changing rapidly. Countries are no longer asking whether to adopt digital and climate-smart innovations. They are asking how to deploy them at large or even national scale, sustainably and affordably. This shift represents a profound opportunity for ADB and our partners to accelerate system-wide transformation. Secondly, we have seen the power of evidence, including the remarkable impacts which have been described by Professor Kramer and by other participants. The return on investment from innovations such as weather and climate advisory services is not incremental, it is exponential when delivered at scale. And this could also be much higher if we had considered the impact that the ensuing early warning and disaster risk reduction impact that could come with this. These insights reinforce why ADB is transitioning from piloting innovations to financing large-scale digital and climate-resilient systems grounded in rigorous research, strong data, and country ownership. Third, the contributions today remind us that large-scale innovation is already happening, from national agri-stacks to real-time monsoon alerts, to livestock systems innovation. We see the scale that is achievable when institutional commitment, digital public infrastructure, and the right partnerships come together. And this brings me to the final and perhaps most important theme. It is the partnerships that are the engine of scale. Today's cooperation agreement between the ADB and Aim for Scale provides a strategic platform to bring evidence, innovation pathways, and investment together in a coherent and ambitious way. It strengthens our ability to support governments in turning proven ideas into national programs, and these programs that can reach millions of farmers, herders, and rural communities. As we look ahead, ADB's ambition is clear: to ensure that the next decade becomes one where innovation becomes part of the public infrastructure of resilience across the region. And this is central to our $40 billion commitment to food systems transformation by the year 2030. Let me close by thanking all the speakers, moderators, and partners for the insights you have shared. I have been part of several of the Aim for Scale events at the last COP, and we have discussed here today is not a standalone conversation. It is the next stage of a journey that is already in place and continuously evolving. Today we have the evidence, the technology, and the commitment. And now we have the partnerships needed to deliver innovation at scale for a resilient, food-secure Asia and the Pacific. So thank you all, and I look forward to continuing to work with you on the next steps. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. If I can ask all speakers, can we take a photo? Sure. Tim Tomoko, if you could just come on stage, and Paul and Adrian, I will call you as well. Just one group photo, and then we're set.